Welcome to the channel, HT Media Mystery. Today we will explore the story, The Buried Giant, The Mystery of Malta. In 1985, Dr. Anton Mid received an urgent call from the construction site of a new clinic on the island of Gozo. This is in the Maltese archipelago, about 96 kilometers off the coast of Italy. The workers were worried and scared, because while digging the foundation, they discovered a skeleton over 3 meters long. Dr. Mid immediately denied that there was any individual of that size. But then the ancient legend of underground people that he had heard suddenly came back like a poisonous wind. What was hiding under Malta? Only a short time later, a series of strange temples were excavated one after another, and the secret was gradually revealed. In fact, the rumor of giants on Mant Island had existed for thousands of years. The story goes that one cold winter night, an old farmer was resting when he was awakened by 7 strange sounds. It was like the sound of wind, but deeper. He quietly stepped out of his hut and looked out into the nearby wheat field to see what was happening. There was no moon that night. The sky should have been pitch black, but a ghostly light was spreading everywhere and getting brighter and brighter. The noise was also becoming deafening. The farmer had seen shooting stars before, but usually they were just small streaks falling in groups. This one was the only one, and it was huge, burning brightly across the night sky. Then the strange object seemed to be getting closer, really closer. The old man wanted to run back to tell his family, but it was too late. Seconds later, it flew past the hut, leaving a trail of fire in the sky before falling into a nearby valley. A blinding flash of lightning lit up the sky, and darkness quickly returned. The farmer's wife emerged from the hut, looking frightened. He turned to reassure her, believing the danger had passed, but her eyes were fixed on something behind her, where the strange sound was coming from. Both were stunned when they saw a shadow taller than the treetops emerge from the jungle. The giant creature was named Sasuna, and claimed to be a descendant of the historical Netphilim clan. When she arrived on the island of Gozo, everyone was terrified by her giant mountain-like figure. But despite her supernatural appearance and incredible strength, Sasuna gradually won their trust by promising to protect the island unconditionally. The island's farmers had long been threatened by pirates and raiders, but since the giant's arrival, Malta has had a true guardian angel. Huge limestone blocks lie strewn about in every corner, some weighing more than 20 tons and towering like watchtowers. For the natives, the rocks are too large to be used. Thousands of years ago, they had no metal tools. The wheel had not yet been invented, but Sansuna could easily lift each giant stone block and place them in the right place. Gradually, great temples were built, some as high as 3 stories. In total, there are about 30 giant stone structures built across the entire archipelago. The most impressive is the Gantiza Temple, which means of the giants. This is one of the oldest man-made structures on the planet, even older than Stonehenge in England and the Egyptian pyramids. It consists of 2 separate temples sharing a common wall. The shape of each architectural building simulates a giant clover with a strange symmetry and precise harmony down to every detail. In the middle is the only path leading straight from the main gate to the back, through which is the entire sacred space. Inside the rooms, people found many stone altars where mysterious rituals and worship took place. But over time, the name Sansuna gradually became only a legend. No one believed that those blocks were ever transported by a giant until the first traces were found. In fact, the Maltese archipelago has been inhabited for thousands of years. Its unique location, 60 miles from Italy and 180 miles from North Africa, makes it a strategic point in the Mediterranean. The first empire to conquer Malta was the Persians. Then came the Romans, the Bey Genti, then the Arabs, and finally the Christian nations. In 1530, control of the island passed into the hands of the aristocrat John Abella, a scholar with a passion for forgotten history. He devoted his life to tracing ancient structures, including those buried under rubble for millennia. After several exploratory digs in the area, a series of large, demonic structures were revealed. No matter how many documents he turned over, Abella could not figure out how ancient farmers transported the huge blocks of stone. One day, workers discovered a strange object stuck in a stone cave, which seemed to be just ordinary rubble. But when they saw it with their own eyes, Abella was shocked, because it was a giant thigh bone twice as long as a normal person. The owner of that part must have been 3 meters tall. Without hesitation, he organized a large-scale excavation across the entire archipelago. After many years of research, in 1647, a shocking work was published, marking a major turning point in the ancient days of the tea. Abella's name has since been associated with the title of the father of national history. The book meticulously recorded the unusual skulls, the femurs, tibias, and vertebrae of unimaginable size, and the massive pelvis that astounded scholars. Abella concluded that at that time it was the product of an ancient giant species that once lived here. He turned his private residence into the country's first museum, displaying the strange remains for the public to admire. Many anatomists and naturalists also confirmed that these skeletons could not belong to ordinary people. Therefore, skeptics still believed that they were just exaggerated animal remains. As the archaeological site continued to be revealed, the controversy continued to grow. Centuries later, an official excavation was conducted in the hope of deciphering the legend. However, the new discovery did not bring a clear answer, but only made the problem more complicated. In 1915, a farmer on the island, while plowing his field, hit large rocks. He contacted the director of the Malta Museum to reduce the number. It was thought that they would discover more foundations for a new temple, but they found something completely different. A giant statue. The head was destroyed, but the legs and feet were still intact. The statue was more than 3 meters high. When the workers continued to dig, it turned out that this was only a small part of a much more complex megalithic temple complex. GME has discovered one of the most important and impressive archaeological sites in Mant. It is the Tassian complex, consisting of 4 large structures arranged in a clover pattern that can only be seen from the sky. This area is built from giant blocks of stone, some up to 6 meters high and weighing more than 50 tons. The entrance walls, even the blood floor, are made from large stone slabs joined together so intricately that it is hard to believe they were handmade. Giami continued the excavation and has supervised the discovery of nearly 30 different sites. The results showed that all are giant stone structures with meticulous techniques, precise down to the grooves. The question is how Stone Age farmers on a remote island could have built such an architectural complex. Even more mysterious is the excavated temple at Hagaquim, with its image of a stone broom-faced cake. During the 2 transitional periods of the spring and autumn equinoxes, the sunlight shines through the main axis of the shrine. Meanwhile, during the summer and autumn equinoxes, the halo shifts in a completely symmetrical direction. This is a design that requires extremely profound knowledge of the celestial sphere. But there is one thing that confuses researchers. When remeasured, the direction of the shrine is a few degrees different from the current position of the sun. Many people wonder if the light could be calibrated so meticulously in the past. Why is there such a discrepancy? However, there is no error here. The Earth has never stood still, but rotated slightly on its axis, causing the positions of the constellations to change over time. Therefore, if we look back tens of thousands of years, we will see that the sunlight at that time completely matches the design of the Hagagaquim shrine around 10,200 BC. This is the end of the Yang Dryas period, a chaotic period in the history of the Earth's climate. With the sudden devastation, sea levels rose rapidly and caused massive floods. Many ancient coastal cities were wiped out, swept away by mountain-high waves, with only a few mountain communities having a chance to survive. The global landscape also changed dramatically. Rivers disappeared, coastlines moved away, continents were sheathed, and the cause of this is still much debated. Some believe that a meteorite hit the Earth. Others believe that intense radiation from the sun caused the upheaval. When the Hagagaquim temple was excavated in the early 20th century, no one knew anything about these modern theories. What the ancients knew were only legends about a great flood created by God to punish humanity for its moral decline and degeneration. And in that, The most powerful and giant race, the Nephilim, was also wiped out by the flood. In fact, the Bible only mentions them briefly. But if we save the sacred texts that are not part of the religious canon, we will see a complete picture behind. In the stainless steel book, we tell the story of the origin of evil, starting with a group of angels called the Guardians. God gave them the task of guiding mankind, maintaining order and morality. But then the fallen angels married the physical women and gave birth to giant hybrid children called the Nephilim. According to the Enoch's book, this race spread evil throughout the world. This is why God created the Great Flood, to destroy the lineage of the other races. Of course, if the Nephilim were wiped out in the flood, they would have disappeared before the first Manta farmers settled down to fight. But in Numbers, the story continues. When Moses sent spies to the land of Canaan, they returned with a warning that some Nephilim might still exist. And so we seem to be retelling the legend that has existed for a long time in the mysterious Isle of the Demons. However, this is completely consistent with what is recorded in the Enoch's book. Seuna appeared as a remnant of the Nephilim race, half human, survived the Great Flood, and carried with her the desire to continue the ancient bloodline. But on the lonely island of Gozo, there was no one like her anymore. Perhaps that was why she chose a normal man as her mate. In 1902, the British expanded their base in Malta, and new buildings began to spring up all over the island. While constructing a giant reservoir, the ground suddenly cracked, revealing a vast, dark void below. The underground structure was not a natural cave, but a complex architectural system with corridors, shrines, and walls built with precisely cut limestone. People named this area Hippogum. The Greek word means underground world, and what was found shocked everyone. The ceiling was so high, the stone blocks were meticulously fitted together. Although it has actually been buried deep in the ground for thousands of years, this is only the first floor. There are at least 2 more floors below that have yet to be fully explored. They also discovered thousands of intact artifacts, including bronze objects, stone tools, and especially rooms designed to resemble the shape of a giant lying on its side. Most of the area is used as a mausoleum, where the bones of more than 7,000 individuals are kept, some of which are determined to date back to the Neolithic period. All were carefully copied, classified, and numbered until a group of strange skulls were discovered, including 12 with an unusually elongated shape. Then all speculations immediately took a new turn. Many ancient cultures used the technique of pressing the heads of newborns in wooden molds or hard cloth to lengthen the shape of the skull. Therefore, to verify this, scientists stepped in and confirmed that everything was natural, not due to squeezing or intervention. But the story gets even stranger. Normally, human skulls have a seam between the 2 arches called the sagittal suture. This allows the head to stretch during birth and grow later. But these finds have no seam at all, and that is beyond modern medical understanding. Could this be evidence of another species? It may not be human, but it is not entirely alien either. In 1920, National Geographic magazine published a controversial article suggesting that the ancient barbarians were descendants of a race of giant aliens. The theory sounds far-fetched, but archaeologists could not find a more reasonable explanation, and they began to remember the giant Seuna, an image of a god carrying a rock in his left hand while holding a newborn baby in his right. The child was the result of a cross between a nephrite and a human. So that it could be born safely, the mother had to have a birth canal large enough to fit the deformed skull. If so, it is not surprising that these descendants could have created a massive underground stone labyrinth. However, all of this remained just a hypothesis. There was no concrete evidence that giants had ever lived in Hippogum. It was not until August 1940 that another article in National Geographic continued to fuel the wave of skepticism. First, they reported that excavators had discovered the remains of more than 33,000 human sacrifices, suspected victims of a mysterious prehistoric cult. Then came the story of children who visited Hippogum on a school trip. A total of 30 students and their teacher entered the site, but all ended up getting lost or trapped after a cave-in collapsed. As a result, none of them were able to return. After a few weeks, some mothers claimed to hear sobbing coming from underground. Unfortunately, many excavations and search parties were carried out, but still found no results. They eventually gave up hope and assumed that the children were dead. To this day, no one has been found. In fact, Malta is full of legends about giant witnesses riding comets and building great temples or underground cities belonging to the descendants of Nephilim. All have something in common. Those who stray deep into the ground often never return, and later find a series of long, deformed human skeletons that look almost like alien creatures. So how much of the legend is true? Actually, quite a lot, but not all. The ancient temples on the islands of Malta and Gozo still give archaeologists a headache. No documents tell us who built them, nor is there any clear answer as to why they exist. However, these structures are among the earliest independent structures on the planet, appearing before many of the civilizations we once considered pioneers. Traditional scholars have believed that the Manta temples could not date back to 2600 BC, the early Bronze Age. However, radiocarbon analysis has proven otherwise. Some temples may have been built as early as 3600 BC. Among them, Manra also. Recently, it has also been suggested that the ancient temples may have been the ceremonial centers of the cult of the goddess of Mother Earth, the symbol of fertility. A series of figurines and reliefs found at the site clearly indicate this connection. Mother Earth is a divine figure often depicted as a fertile goddess, the embodiment of the endless vitality of the earth and its infinite fertility. However, not all goddesses represent this Mother Nature archetype. In the West, this stratum can vary from the graceful appearance of the cockroach goddess at Knos to the crude stone statue of Cybele or the god Dion, who stood on the same level as Dodona until the Helapko period. As for the skeletons discovered by the nobleman Abella in the 17th century, they were later identified as fossils of ancient elephants, not humans. That means there is no solid evidence on the ground for the existence of giant species. However, underground, things are much more unpredictable. The legend of 7,000 skeletons in Hippogum is actually misunderstood. The archaeologist only recovered about 120 complete skeletons. The rest were fragments. The story of 33,000 souls being sacrificed has never been verified by any archaeological documents. There is no specific evidence that such a brutal ritual ever existed at MTA. The disappearance of the Hippogum schoolchildren in 1940 is also not recorded in any official records. A mural at the Blue Poo Church depicts children disappearing underground, but this may just be a warning from parents to their children. In 1940, National Geographic magazine was not as popular as it is today. It often included stories about the strange and mysterious. However, what has most troubled many people is the series of unusual skulls that have been hidden in museums for decades. Jamie, an archaeologist and anatomist, once described them as having an elongated shape, unlike any modern human species. At least one of them shows signs of artificial shaping, as was the practice in many ancient cultures. Scientists are skeptical and believe that this is the result of genetic mutation or even extraterrestrial elements. To this day, those skulls are still being preserved, CT scanned, DNA compared, and studied further. The Manta-layered Earth is an unfinished story where archaeology, myth, and imagination intersect in a vague space. All are traces, the remaining signals of something that has been happily covered up or deliberately forgotten by time. We cannot confirm that giants once existed, but we cannot completely deny that a different civilization once existed here. Perhaps in the darkness below Dalvoy and Fach Nu, there is still something waiting for humans to discover in the future. Thank you for listening to the whole story. If you find this story interesting, please give me a like and subscribe so that I have the motivation to make the next videos and stories.